and welcome to Open It Up. This is an open discussion around inclusive design, providing insight on disability and age inclusion to level up. I'm Juliette Burton. I'm a comedian and your host, also a mental health charity ambassador for Rethink Mental Illness. I've done lots of work with open inclusion over the years, and this is meant to be a positive, practical, informed, diverse set of voices in our interviews on this podcast to help people more deeply understand and more confidently act to reduce exclusion wherever we can in the whole of society. This is not going to be a podcast about admiring any problems. This is about engendering positive change. We are the change makers, and the people I'm chatting to are a part of that conversation as well. This podcast is for you if you want to be a part of the solution. So we are this week very, very happy. I'm very happy on a personal level to have a wonderful guest who I've known for, it's nearing on 10 years, it's coming up to 10 years. Our guest is the wonderful Simon Minty, who is a trainer, consultant and public speaker. Simon has focused on disability since the early 2000s, and he's based in London, but his work is international. And thank you for involving me in some of that work, Simon. I very much appreciate having some travel in my work as well. He works with many clients from small non-governmental organisations to multinational corporations, and he also has helped a number of different media companies, including BBC, Channel 4, Warner Television, and many more, to develop their portrayal of disabled people. He's also been at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival many times. He has co-produced and performed the show Abnormally Funny People, which is an amazing comedy show with some wonderful lineups. And that's how I met him. And he also co-hosts two podcasts, BBC Ouch and The Way We Roll as well. Simon has been a non-executive director of Motability Operations and the National Theatre. He's on the board there as well. He is an ambassador to the Business Disability Forum and co-created the Disability Media Alliance project in California. And I'm very proud to call him my friend for all of those reasons and many more. Also because GQ recently named him one of the 100 best connected men in the UK. So with no further introduction, Simon, it's wonderful to have you on Open Up Podcast. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me, Juliette. And you're right, we've known each other a long time and done amazing work together, which is, so it's lovely to be here. Two little clarifications. I've realized BBC Ouch has changed recently. They call it Access All now. So it's a change of name, and I'm not hosting it. So I need to update that bit. I've realized the other bit, everyone loves the GQ bit. I've done all this work and they go, yeah, but your GQ said that. So yeah,
I just imagine you doing some photo shoots with them, and I really hope that one day I can get some pictures from that, please, if that's okay.
Two little add-ons. So when I heard that I was going to be nominated, I wrote to them and said, would you like a photo? And I didn't know whether to send this or not, because I felt an idiot, but then I felt, well, I should offer. And they wrote back and went, no, thanks, we're all right. Like, oh, no. But there is a truth to it. And my whole life, networking. If I meet people, I've got a contacts list and I put it in and I maintain relationships. It's kind of not a secret of my success, but I think it's part of my work is maintaining good relationships. Being a freelancer, you need lots of people who know you and vice versa. And the work that I do, I need to be able to lean on, I meet someone like you and I'm like, oh, hello, there's some skills here. There's a gap that I haven't got. So that's part of the networking.
Building relationships, building reliability, I suppose, and the trust and trust is a very important thing, especially in this field. Simon, I'm going to go straight in with one of our main questions for you, which is what does inclusive design and innovation mean to you? That could be personally, professionally, whatever way you want to take it.
Whenever I hear inclusive design, I'm slightly daft because I think, oh, I need the David Bonnets of the world, the sort of the architects, the designers who make things or make buildings or make them accessible and so on. But it's so much broader than that. I know it is. So I've got to stop my little assumption leap that I make because I'm part of it. I've recently moved house and I sat there on day 2 and I looked at my kitchen and I looked at the various bits. I was deeply upset because I realized the phrase I used, I became disabled again. I'd lived in the house for 18 years and I got it to work for me. So everything worked. I moved somewhere new and nothing worked for me because the design is not inclusive. It was for other people and it's too tall or it's too high. I have a form of dwarfism, so I'm 1 meter 20 or 3'10". So my simple, whether it's home or work or anywhere, my line for inclusive design is we would no longer need adjustments. We'd no longer need workplace adjustments. We'd no longer need reasonable adjustments, because in theory, everything is designed to include everybody. That is slightly naive, I think, because I think that the broad or the breadth of disability these days is complex and interesting, and even non-physical conditions still need physical adjustments. Let me get to my point. Even if we had fully inclusive design, I still think we might need a bit of human support or human interaction. But inclusive design is removing as many barriers as possible. The innovation perhaps is where we're going way beyond just the physical environment. We're looking at policy, procedure, all of the other things that can make life more smooth, less barrier-free for lots of different people.
And you've done a lot of work with policy as well. Can you talk us through a little bit of some of the work that you've done on policies for different companies, organisations?
I've been around a little while now, and so what it means is you see change, and sometimes I get a client that calls me back in and says, "Can you do some work?" And I said, "Did you know I did work with you 10 years ago?" And it breaks my heart, because we might have done a lot of training or consultancy, or we get a project, but it's not stayed within the organization. So, great individuals lead this and then they leave and they move on somewhere else. The thing with policy is it means it's stuck there. It's written down. This is how we do something. This is the ethos of this organization. This is what we believe should happen. And this is the procedure. Equally, you and I have worked with clients who will send us their policy beforehand, so we don't come up with our own ideas. We do, but we have to understand what a policy might be. So whilst I haven't name drop, because I'm very well connected, Baroness Jane Campbell wrote to me.
Let me just pick that up for you. I'll just pick that up for you. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. She's a clunk, an awesome disabled leader. And she said to me, "Son, it's not fair. All I do is boring policy, while all you do is all the fun stuff." And there's a truth to that, because I want to try and do the fun stuff. But I don't do policy at government level that she does, which is amazing, because you're changing the law of the land to make better. And that means all local authorities have got to stick to that policy. And that's about inclusive design. I'm more likely to work with an organization. There was an international one. They're in 25 countries. And they said, "Do we have a policy for each country to address what disability might be and what our procedure would be?" And I said, "Well, we came to the conclusion you have an international policy that is above every piece of legislation. And that policy, whether you're in China, whether you're in Spain, whether you're in the US or Korea, or wherever it may be, it's the same. And it's high level. It's good policy. So anybody who has a disability, neurodiversity, deafness, mental health, or mental ill health, they're covered." I'm talking a lot already, aren't I?
I love you talking. I learn so much from you every time I hear you speak, and we have known each other for a very long time, and so please carry on talking. In fact, I will lead you into the next question to make sure that you continue talking. Why, as a society, you've kind of touched on this already, but why, as a society, do we need this? Do we need product design specifically to be inclusive?
For me, getting it right at the beginning is just a lot less hassle at the other end. We need to include everybody. That's the given. That's the start point. It will be imperfect, as I said, for a long time. But I like the innovation that we're seeing with companies that are making, I don't know, a deodorant that has a hook and a different shape, so lots of people can use it. And that's really cool, because everyone can use it, as well as people with different dexterity or visual impairment or whatever it might be. Your original question, so why do we need it? Well, it's the flip I do is to say we've had generations of building it for a certain type of person. And I don't just mean male, I mean physically able or mentally able, and all the other variations in between. And finally, we've caught up and thought, hang on, we're excluding a load of people. And we're excluding them for silly barriers that we've created. the corny one everyone knows is stairs, and you get rid of stairs, we can get more people in who use wheels. But it is greater than that, and it's deeper than that. And I think your generation, I'm maybe another generation ahead of you, but the next generation have sort of picked up the mantle and said, okay, we've made progress, but we've got to go to another stage now. So, your start point is further on where mine was, and that becomes more sophisticated. It includes more people, but it gets really, really complicated as well because there's such variety. But I think we need it because otherwise we're wasting human lives. We're wasting human potential. We're wasting talent. It breaks my heart when I meet people who go, this person's awesome, but because of the setup, they're not part of it. Now, we will always have exceptions. The first one comes to mind is someone like Lee Ridley, Lost Voice guy, who, when we first worked with him, we do a gig. And because Lee talks with a voice synthesizer, which is inclusive design, because now he has this voice, but he would dribble and does all the things that Lee does. And people used to ignore him. And then he won Britain's Got Talent. And then after every show, everyone's flocking around him. So this is nonsense. We have these kind of weird barriers that we can get rid of. These are societal rather than building. But I'm meandering a little bit. I want inclusive design and innovation because it brings more people in to be part of it. And, some of them might not want to be part of it. That's allowed. But so people can be the best they can be and have the most enjoyable life they possibly can be. I'm getting slightly John Lennon, and but that's the aim.
I mean, I know that you were the first person who mentioned to me about the revolutions, like things like electric windows in cars being originally for inclusive design, and then everyone just has them now, and it makes everyone's lives easier. And I feel like what you're saying, I'm seeing these unnecessary blockages, unnecessary barriers, not just for people who either cannot live without that inclusive design, but also just blockages to making life easier for everybody, no matter what their physical or mental impairment or non-impairment is.
And that blockage can sometimes be this sort of stigma and internalized. And we had that lovely bit with the Queen not that long ago, who we knew had mobility difficulties, but wasn't going to use a scooter like I use a mobility scooter. But then she did go around the Chelsea Flower Show in this kind of quite souped up motorbike. It was like a 4-person seater. Now, I love that because yes, she's now out. She's visiting Chelsea Flower Show. That's what she does. But also there was a little signal to me that say, this is okay. If the Queen does it, we can all do it. I mean, forget that part. So yes, there was a more serious point that I had, but I'll leave that.
Well, I quite like that, this podcast is particularly being recorded and broadcast during the Jubilee month. So, Mom, if you're listening, thank you so much for all your service and for that, particularly the mobility scooter. That's the best bit. So how did you get into this field, Simon? It's been a number of years since you've entered into it, but how did it begin?
I had a proper job working for Barclays Bank. And I used to run training courses, and I used to run a very small department. And I loved it. I liked banking, but I didn't want to be a bank manager. That's what I knew then. And the one, I suppose, interesting bit, one of my managers once said to me, they've got this event at head office to talk about disability. Would you like to go? And I said, why are you asking me? And I remember his blushing. And at that point, I thought, I don't want to go there because if I go there, as in disability, I will block my career path. That was my belief. However, I also did want to go there because I thought if I'm at head office, I can network, I can meet people, then I'll suddenly be running the bank because that's my next, I'm a bit ambitious. So I did go up, I met some people and that was interesting. And then I avoided it. And then I went backpacking, which was all the rage in the 90s. And studied philosophy as well. I studied a master's in disability management. I got the postgraduate diploma. But perhaps the most pivotal part was linking up with Phil Friend, he ran a training company that delivered disability consultancy and training. And I came across him through my banking days. And I thought, oh, hello, I already know how to train. That's my job. what I hadn't done was apply that to disability. And so I started doing little bits with him. I started writing articles for what was then called Disability Now, a magazine. I did film reviews and just got in. But disability arts was a big draw for me. It was not the strongest of scenes in the sense at that point, but there was an affinity. I liked hanging out with other disabled people, and I was learning. I was learning all the time about, all the things that we need or want. And I was learning about the politics of disability, because it's a very political space. And then before I knew it, I was joining forces with Phil, and I bought half the company, and we became a partnership, and off we went.
I'd like to just go back briefly about that politics. Can you expand on that for me? Because I know I feel like I've experienced that with you in conversations, and people that I've met working with you have been eye-opening. But for somebody perhaps who hasn't experienced those sorts of conversations, how is this field political?
I feel I'm being a bit negative, and maybe I'll start with the negative and go to the positive. I think sometimes it can be a very unforgiving and unwelcoming place. And what I mean by that is, you rock up, you have a disability. This is your first venturing to hang out with other people, maybe an art scene or a disability campaign or something. And if you don't know your stuff, if you haven't signed up to the various models, if you haven't agreed with if you haven't got a track record, people can leave you in the cold. And I remember I took a while for me to find my way. And also maybe some of these people scared the life out of me. I mean, they were really intimidating, powerful, vociferous people. Now, sometimes you need them, because without them, we don't get change. The flip side of it is when you go and meet other people with your condition. So I run a career development program for staff who have a disability or long-term health condition. Every time I say disability, I'm talking about everybody who could be in the broadest sense, even those who don't use the word, because otherwise it would take forever me saying all the phrases. But I'm including everybody in that sense. And one of the most powerful parts of that is them hanging out with other people who've got conditions. They've never done this before. And the strength and the affinity, and they'll be completely different. A 60-year-old woman, a 25-year-old man. I remember the person who was trans as well, who was very different to everybody, but they all got each other. They all just had this understanding about, I don't know, exclusion or adjustments, or having to sometimes fit in when they didn't fit in. So it's a bit of the politics is the tricky space. Do you know your history? Have you paid your dues? Have you done this much? Have you done that campaign? Have you never done it? And that's the really difficult part for me. But the other side of it is this sort of affinity where you have strength. And here's my new phrase. It's not new. I live in the land of disability pride, and not everyone gets that. They'll go, well, how could you be proud of having depression? How could you be proud of not being able to walk? But I do. I'm proud of who I am and what I'm about. What I've realized is, though, there is still a lot of people, I can't get them to pride until I've got them out of shame. So I've got to get rid of shame first. Once I've done shame, then they'll be at middle, and then we can start tipping into pride. And it is a joy when that happens. So that's kind of a bit of the politics for me. It's a kind of a belief.
I love that, but because shame, you have to do so much work with shame, because shame can provide so much purpose. It can be protective on a personal level, on an internal world personal level. We're talking about it societally, but internally, our relationship with shame can bind us to things that are not necessarily in our best interests, but they're familiar, and familiarity is what we as humans are naturally drawn towards, whether it's good for us or not. So I can see that what's exciting me, as it always does with you, Simon, is you say something, I get very inspired, and I see the personal story mapped out in our society, and wondering which comes first, which do we tackle first, the internal world or the external world, or is it a bit of both? What do you think?
It has to be a bit of both. Going back to your electric windows, I'm wondering if the first ever disabled person who got electric windows, to people, there'll be some people who go, oh, look at that, fancy that, and be a bit patronizing. There may have been a little bit of shame. Oh, I can't believe I've got this because I'm the only one now. And then they become mainstream, and it was like, well, I wouldn't even think twice. I mean, it's almost weird to not have electric windows. So my point is, we move as this stuff becomes, I don't like either word, but I think they're useful, normalized or mainstreamed, then the shame disappears. And it's a bit like, someone using a walking stick or whatever it may be. I think it is both. There is the societal stuff, and I probably spend more time there because that's back to policy or how we set something up or the plans. And if we build that in at the beginning, it will be so much better. And that means a lot of the shame won't have to pop up because it will already be sorted for them. But there will always be the individuals that may just say, I don't want to go there or haven't done this. And that's when we go back to the individuals who may not have the confidence or as you said, the shame, and they spend an awful lot of time managing that. By the way, I have those moments too. I might be confident and in living in the land of pride, but I don't, everyone flinches and everyone has little moments where you sort of just step back a little bit. When I say everyone, 2 or 3 people I've mentioned, they don't because they're so blooming strong. But yeah.
I love that you're so ambitious because it's that you've always had ambition. So that's a fire that continues to be stoked, I believe, no matter how far we're progressing. That's an opinion, and opinions are the lowest form of knowledge. But there we go. What do you love about what you do, Simon? I would love to know what you love about all the things you do.
It sort of changed a bit. When I ran the business with Phil, we did this for 10 years, and it grew very rapidly, and we were very successful, and did some amazing work. I used to say I'm very lucky. I do something that I believe is changing how we live. I believe I'm making a difference to individuals. I believe I'm making it better for me selfishly. And then every month someone pays me some money so I can live. And I'm like, well, this is awesome. How have I wangled this? It sort of changed a little bit now. And you allude to it, whether it's ambition or whether it's vocation. I gradually realized if you're really good at it and you do it the best you can, the money will pay. You will get paid because you're good at something and people want to use you. What am I saying here? What do I love about it? Sometimes it's hard. What I love are those little moments of affirmation, moments of, okay, I made a difference here, that I don't always hear about. 2 weeks ago, I did an online training course for a European organization, or they were based in Europe rather. And it went fine. It was great. And then 2 days later, I got an email from one of the people who said the next day, one of my team members came up to me and talked to me about mental illness. And because you talked to me about just how to have that conversation and get it going and not having to decide everything that day, not having to be an expert, she said it was an amazing conversation I had with her. And I kind of go, well, that I really love. I love the fact that there was a better conversation because of some training that we've done. And, I do, if I go back to Baroness Jane Campbell's, I do get to do some fun things, whether it's related to television, radio, the comedy, which you've been a huge part of. There's times where it's just a joy. It's having fun as well as shifting the dial, whatever the phrase is.
I love that because I think the dial shifts more easily if you're having fun as well. So meeting like-minded people to help ease that journey is vital, and I'm humbled to have met you. What is the one thing you would most like to see change that could help progress disability inclusion? So basically, to sum up, what is the top priority in society right now in inclusive design moving forward?
This is really hard. Because of inclusive design and my narrow perception, I've got to move that a little bit. Okay, 2 or 3 points. This is, what's the word, when you're thinking as you speak. So my apologies now. I do worry we slip back. So we need to sort of put our foot down and go, whoa. Some of the guidelines, some of the policies, some of the instructions we give are just wobbling a little bit, and people are not sticking to them like they should do. And for that, I want to go, listen, these are here for a reason. If anything, we make them more progressive and we go forward. We don't ease up on things. Now, whether that's our government, whether that's society, whether that's COVID and exhaustion. I don't know, but I worry that we've made so many gains in terms of inclusive design and in general inclusion. I want to make sure we keep pushing that. Sometimes I feel us as a group, we could be a bit more supportive and more simplified, and remember that everyone is an individual, but sometimes a bit of unity can really help. So I want to find that commonality that we all have that will help. One last point, I don't know if this is inclusive design, but it is sort of innovation, and it's happening now, which is media representation. And I think there's some amazing stuff that's happening around the arts, media, broadcast, whatever it may be, and disabilities popping up everywhere. And I like that, because that goes back to my society realizes it's okay. Familiarity.
Yes, comedy being a wonderful area for that, but as you say, it's spreading out to the rest of the arts world as well now. We're going to quickly go on to our quick fire questions. See how quick fire they are, actually, because they can take a little bit longer, but let's see how many we can get through. Simon, what is your pet peeve in design? How does it affect you, and how could we change it for the better?
Perhaps it's unnecessary changes that make things worse. There are what people think are innovations, but actually they go backwards. I'm thinking of things like taps, and people get really fancy with these things, and it makes life really difficult. So, and I would repeat my previous answer. I want to use a group of 5 differently disabled people to inform people when they're creating or designing something, saying, have you thought about me? Have you thought about this? Because that input, I believe, I mean, I always think the creatives, the designers, the manufacturers, the innovators, the inventors, they do that stuff. That's the creation stuff. I just want to be able to input my bit, and they take that and make it better.
Great. What is something someone has said to you about disability that has surprised you, positively or negatively?
Perhaps going with my first thing in my head. It's not a great answer, but I remember when I was backpacking, and I went to a bar in South Australia and played pool with a guy who ran it, and we got on very well. I did a couple of nights there, and we had a few beers, and one night he said, yeah, I need to ask you, what's it all about, like you being you? And I went, well, it's just me. And he went, yeah, but you're not, you know, you wouldn't say you're human, would you? And I remember I remember saying, okay, so what exactly, what do you think I am? And if I'm not got the human bit? Now I'm answering it because that's the first thing that came to my head. I don't know, probably 20% of me was deeply upset. 80% of me was like, oh my life, there's some real weird stuff going on. But I also, doing the work that I do, in a mini way, that's a bit of education. So this is how people who have got no idea think. And I've got to get them over that stuff, because it's nonsense. Obviously, it's nonsense. Yeah.
Obviously, but it's also, it's such an invitation to see it through a different lens, to be reminded of the archaic, the quagmire that we're still wading through, that some of us still have one foot in. So yes, I want to talk to you more about that. Also, love Australia. So anytime you go back there, let's go backpacking, please, Simon. Right. When have you been delighted by an unexpected step forward in inclusivity?
I mentioned it already. I will go back to the media representation. The little line, you know, people used to go, when I was growing up, I never saw people like me on television. Or when I was growing up, you could count them on one hand, those people. I've got a belief that if you are 10 years old right now and have a disability, by the time you're 30, you won't be able to say, I didn't see people like me when I was growing up on television. And I think that's very cool. Also, we're not just seeing them in a plinky plonky heartstrings piano playing documentary. There's some great stuff out there, and there should be the breadth of it. So I'm a really big fan of that, because it's always been my sideline. I've done my training consultancy, but I've always worked with the media, and I know it's because it's a direct passion from my not being comfortable about seeing people like me on television when I was growing up, because they were horrible. It was a horrible depiction. So the fact that the next generation will see something different, maybe role models, different ideas, different expectations, it's good for me.
Yes, I would love to discuss more with you about the because the representation is so vital, but there's still some hang-ups regarding mental illness and portrayal of that, and I wonder if there's a whole area there that I have personal agenda. We will discuss another time, I'm sure, but I know that Hollywood movies have there's been a few surveys recently saying that mental illness is the one area that people are still not being represented realistically. But moving on for now, because we're not going to solve that right now. It's a part of the solution, this conversation, because we're going to build bridges with similarities. What questions have you asked others that have opened up a new world for you?
So I'm still stuck on your last point, which I totally agree with. And
thank you. If you want to make a comment to agree with me, that's absolutely fine.
In the sense of, it's back to the breadth of what might be considered disability, and every variation is so huge now. So just because we get a win in one area or something progresses doesn't mean you can pull the ladder up, you can relax. There's still a ton of other things to do. So it's absolutely. And I think we can celebrate the wins, but we also don't just go, oh, well, that's it, we're done, because there's so much more.
I'll speak honestly. It was what I was thinking was I loved Cyrano, the movie, and I know that you when I was messaging about it, and I went to see it alone, and for me it was a movie about somebody with mental illness. That was where I was looking at it from, and I know I wondered what your take on that was, like how that portrayal was for you.
So I still haven't seen it. This is Peter Dinklage.
You've not seen it? Yes, yes, he's very good at it.
Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones, who obviously is a hero because of what he did. I see what you mean. So you dumped the dwarfism and said, no, this is someone who's got mental health difficulties. Exactly. Well, and unrequited love and all the other stuff.
Which is, heartbroken and shame and just a beautiful dialogue that the last line that he says.
It's a spoiler.
I can't. Well, yeah, I'm not going to say it. But the last, when you see it, Simon, the last line is. For me, it spoke about it's the human experience of love, and that it just broke through for me. And I guess, as I say, I wasn't watching somebody with dwarfism who had unrequited love because of his dwarfism. It was because of his pride, because of his human nature, because of his character, and that was how I was viewing it. And I sat there and cried for a very long time until the cinema was empty. It was great. Great.
I'm annoyed I didn't see it at the cinema. I will see it soon, and I suspect it will hit me all over the shop emotionally and resonate. So yeah. Okay. If
you want to have a cry afterwards, then just let me know. I'll be there. Right. So back to the question. What questions have you asked somebody else or others that have opened up a new world for you?
Go back. Questions they've asked me, or
questions you've asked. So you've taken the initiative to ask a question, and it's opened up a whole new world for you.
I can't give a good answer because I'm not sure I've got my head around it. What I will say, which is linked to that, which I hope answers it in a back or cat-candid way. I have one of those corny fridge magnets, as in life begins at the outside your comfort zone. I get asked to do things that by every right I shouldn't be able to do, or I shouldn't do, or I've never done, and it's very rare that I'll go, okay, I won't do it. I just kind of think, wow, what could be the worst? Or I'm so blooming arrogant, I think, I could probably do that. Now, I can't do everything. Of course I can't. But what I'm trying to say is I try things and I do things. And being scared or nervous is part of it. So asking things that really take a lot of gumption to ask, but do it, because there could be an amazing reward. And it's very rare when you do something like that it goes the other way. Normally it's either brilliant because it opens up this new path, or you go, well, at least I did it, I tried. And both of those are quite positive for me. So I have probably asked lots of people very direct questions in my time and got some amazing responses. I just can't think of a brilliant example right now.
Well, I know you've asked me a number of questions that have helped me reconfigure my own experiences, and I think in therapy at the moment there's been some consideration about the power of being asked questions rather than being any of having assumptions or yes, asking questions or it can open up questions for that the person being asked hasn't necessarily considered of themselves before. So it's empowering on if the question is coming from an honest place, can be empowering for both parties. What questions? Back on the questions. What questions would you like to be asked? It is very odd to be asking this towards the end of the podcast, but what questions would you like to be asked, Simon?
I'm pausing for a long time because it's a bit negative again. I get a set of questions from time to time, and you're like, oh, okay, I've had these 1,000 times. And I do like the next generation of disabled advocates who are going, I'm not here to educate you, learn it yourself. And I have to put a voice on. And I agree with that. And I like that. I suppose part of my work is about education. So I have to accept there's going to be repetition of questions and so on. It's when it's something more considered, something with more depth, something that someone's got a really interesting. Weirdly enough, you're not really human, are you, though? So what would you be? That's great to me. Because I've never heard that before or since. And it made me flinch and give me real insight, and it stayed with me 25 years later. So I don't want people to go around being really rude to me, but something that has a little bit more consideration, something that they couldn't get it from Google.
I suppose because even that, as abhorrent as my initial my intake of it was to begin with, well, it leads to more questions of, well, what does it mean to be human? If you're saying that, like, what is it that you think being human is? And let's talk about that, because that's where the meat of the conversation is, really. I think I agree with you. The questions that are kind of cookie cutter, I've answered a million times and got the answer, they're not pushing the conversation forward any further. I'd rather be asked something that is either that sharp intake of breath of that's outside the comfort zone. Life begins outside the comfort zone. So whether it's positive or I'm perceiving it as positive, or I'm perceiving it as negative, or something else, as long as it's new, as long as it's interesting.
I studied philosophy from backpacking because I had to find the meaning to everything. And of course, you don't find the meaning to everything, but you learn to ask questions, you learn to consider, you keep your mind very open, or try to. So that's where I do like those questions that go deeper and broader, not in the sort of Tinder profile, hey, I love deep conversations. I mean, that you're like, oh, wow, this is quite close to the bone here. We're being considerate and we're being thoughtful, but we're really getting to the hub of what this is. And I love that stuff.
Great. A couple of quick fire questions, then we'll wrap up. So what would you say to a younger version of yourself about inclusivity?
I'm going to steal something from the gay community, which is it will get better. And I love this stuff where you're 10, 12, 15, 18. And it's really tough because it's tough anyway. And then you might have some difference or disability, and that makes it really complex. It will get better because it does get better. The world gets better, we get better, and you will feel more comfortable. So I wasn't tormented as an 18-year-old, probably only in love life, but most of the other things were okay. But to say it will get better, it will be okay, I think is really positive.
Can you name one mistake that has taught you more than any wins?
The pause is not because I've not made mistakes.
Thanks for clarifying.
No, they're more personal than work. And things where I've upset or hurt somebody, and I regret them deeply. Not off the top of my head. I think it would be simple things like, if I'm 15 minutes late, 10 minutes late, it messes me up and it messes them up. So just being there a few minutes early, there's some real basic ground rules that I feel are a bit old fashioned, but they're mine, which is I want to be in the place, content, settled, ready, prepared. And if I've done all that, then I know anything that goes wrong will be just because it's in the lap of the gods, rather than me making mistakes or me not being prepared. So those things where I spend my life, doing it on the fly, and I don't know where it's going to go next. But there is a lot of preparation underneath that. So not exciting, that.
No, I like it. It's a very good fridge magnet.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. What's been the biggest catalyst to change in your life?
I feel like it's turning into corny schmaltz. It's other people, isn't it? It's other people that it's like a magpie, isn't it? Where you pick up little bits from different people. Back to my networking, I meet interesting people. They say something that makes me think. I collate that with 2 or 3 other things, and then off we go. So I may not be very original, but I repackage it into my stuff. I think there are a handful of people that have had a huge influence on me over the years. They still do. And so, yeah, it's those other people who ask me those questions we talked about, and difference where I'm being challenged. When I'm meeting people and I'm like, right, you need to go there. You need to find something out here. And that strength I get from it.
Well, that leads very neatly into my penultimate question to you, which is, what are you currently open to learning about? What's interesting you that you want to learn more about right now?
These are really hard. I don't know is my simple answer. I feel the speed of pace around some of the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion are rapid. And because I'm a certain age, I'm like, oh my God, and I want to know what's going on, and I need to understand more and more. And I will constantly strive to do that. I do love the next generation and what's happening. There's something really exciting about that. There are times I worry because, back to my, let's not beat each other up. Let's, beat up the man. Let's change things. It's easier to poke holes in other people who are all part of, rather than that stuff. So I want to just, I suppose, want to stay as close as I can to what current thinking is, what changes are, to add my little bit to that. I don't have this is my pet project. I need a hobby. I have realized I need a hobby. One of my biggest regrets is my work has become my life, and it's almost like a lifestyle. I'm constantly immersed in this, and I have to be really careful to stop and go do something that's not related. But I go to the National Theatre because I adore theatre, but part of it is because I'm on the board, and part of that was related to disability. So it suddenly spins around again. So it's remembering. I've got 2 old school friends who I haven't seen for a long time, and I'm just starting to see them a little bit now, and I love that because it's a part of my past coming back. But I'm not. They never knew my job for the last 20 years, so I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you're open to learning relaxation, or not to work, or doing something slightly different to work. Is that scanning for you?
Yeah, gardening is what everyone said, but I do have a balcony. I need something that is either mindfulness or Ikigai thing where I just get lost doing it and I don't think of anything else, and that's what I need.
Final question for you, Simon. Certainly not forever, because I can't wait to meet up again and have further conversations. But what would you tell someone wanting to step into this field for the first time? What advice would you give them?
Go for it, and well done, and thank you, because we need people all the time, and new people. I would add those who choose not to do this and just carry on with their life, and whatever their disability or difference or variation may be, love you too, because just your existence of doing what you're doing and being yourself is a statement, and just carry on. Then there's other people like me and others who are coming and saying, we're going to make this part of our job to do that education, that change, that campaign, whatever it might be. Don't make it everything. Do have something else inside you, because you'll be as dull as anything if that's all you can talk about. and you have to practice what you're preaching, which is there is difference and diversity and variety, and you do need to be able to win people over. And sometimes it's the short game, sometimes it's the long game. I'm doing a whole preachy bit here, aren't I? Find your spot, but be open to variation, and try not to take it all on your shoulders, because it is too much for one individual or even a few to do this. We need a lot of people to keep pushing and chipping away. But just make sure you've got other things as well and good support mechanisms.
Wonderful. Simon, if anyone wanted to find out more about you or follow you in any social media kind of way, where would they go?
I'm on Instagram. I think it's Simon_Minty. I'm on Twitter, which is just Simon Minty. And I do a podcast with Phil called The Way We Roll. We've done about 50 shows. And my favorite bit is for people who are new to disability. Maybe they just got a condition or they're looking to find out more. They sort of listen to them, because it's like a sort of briefing session. There's like a whole load of them, and we've covered all sorts of topics. So have a listen to some of them if you want to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if listeners, you would like to follow Open Inclusion, you can on Twitter at Open for Access. That's us on Twitter. That's at Open for Access. And you can also Google us, Open Inclusion, and sign up for the series of Open Up. Please, we will send you a reminder whenever a new episode is out, and you can share with your friends who might appreciate it as well. And Simon, thank you so much for being my guest for this episode. It's just been lovely to chat with you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
Thank you very much for having me. Apologies, I didn't make sense, but good questions. I might have veered from the brief, but I hope it was okay. So thank you.
It was wonderful. And again, it's just too short for me. I really want to carry on chatting with you. Nominate people if you want to have on the podcast. Please do get in touch, my lovely listeners. Let me know what topics you want us to talk about, any questions that I'm not asking that you think we should ask, we need to ask, that you want to ask people. And if there's anybody that you particularly want us to have on, do let us know. You can contact us at contact@openinclusion.com. I've been Juliette Burton. You've been listening to Open Up Podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next time.